Hey guys, it's Richie Gerzon, and today we're going to talk about the 10 signs your practice needs a new website. Okay, number one, your website feels and looks outdated. This is obvious, but sometimes it's hard to see. I mean, what if you have a great car and you've had it for 10 years and to you it's great, but everyone's like, man, dude, that car is old. Your website gets the same way. So if you're not sure if your website's old and outdated, just ask your peers. What do you think of my website? Does it feel old or outdated? Ask your teenage kid. Does the website look old or outdated? They'll tell you instantaneously whether it does or not. In case you don't see it, ask someone else, but you probably can tell. Your website is going to just look old school, and it's time to update it. It's 2021. Let's get going. Number two, your website looks like it was designed by an amateur. How do you know if it looks this way? Well, who designed it? Were they an amateur or professional? How much experience did they have? Were they just tech savvy so you thought, yeah, they can figure out the website design? If someone who created your website didn't have at least 3 years of experience, in my opinion, it most likely looks amateur. Now, there's those savants out there, and sometimes they get it done and it looks great. But if you're not sure, just ask around. Ask your family, ask your friends. Does the website look professional? Does it look like it's designed by an amateur? This is absolutely super important for everything you're doing in your marketing. You want to make sure your website looks professional before you start spending a lot of money on SEO and improving it and growing it, etc. Don't put good money after bad. Make sure your website looks professional. Okay, number three, your website uses a pre-designed template. This is one of the most tempting things to do, and there are times you're going to do this, but let me tell you what that time is. You've just started the practice, you did it faster than you thought you would, and you do not have time because your website is actually being designed, but you need something. So for 3 months, at most 6 months, use a pre-designed template, and it's up, it looks fairly professional. But in the long term, it is not a good strategy. What is the biggest problem with a lot of practices? They look like they're commoditized. They look like everyone else. All the practices look the same. You need to differentiate your practice from the others so your website cannot look like everyone else's website. That's absolutely going to kill all the other marketing you have going on. So do not use in the long term a pre-designed template for your website. Everything should be absolutely custom. Your website is as important as you and your team are, and it should really be telling your story, not the same story everyone else has. Number four, your website is difficult to navigate. So you can test this yourself, use your desktop computer and just go around the site and click around and see if you can get to everything in 2 clicks or less, at least the main subjects of your site. Then try it on your phone, try it on an Android phone, try it on an Apple phone, make sure you can still navigate everything. But the true test is ask someone who's never been to your website to find things. All right, you've never been to my website, you're on your phone. Try to find our financing options, and let's see how long and frustrating it is. If they find it right away, or are they searching around and they don't know what to find. Try to find our information about Invisalign. Are they trying to do that? Can they do it really easily? Try to find where to schedule an appointment, the absolutely most important thing in your whole site. If it takes them more than 5 seconds to figure that out, you have a major problem. So make sure your website is easy to navigate. Number 5, your website takes too long to load. How do you know this? Just look on your phone and see if it takes too long to load, not on your Wi-Fi network, on mobile cellular data, and see if it takes too long to load. Ask other people to look at your website and see if it takes too long to load. Ask people who've never been to it. That's super important because when it loads, it puts cache and data on your phone and it makes it load faster, but that's not actually what the normal person's experiencing. Google Page Insights, put your URL in there and it'll tell you, give you a page speed score and let you know if it's taking too long to load. Look at your Google Analytics. Is your bounce rate super high? That's going to give you an indication that your website takes way too long to load. When your website takes way too long to load, Google hurts you SEO-wise because they know that people are not happy with it. People just leave your website because they're bouncing off. People get frustrated. And when people get frustrated, they don't stay on your site, they don't schedule an appointment, and you never even get a chance to make them a patient. Okay, number 6, your website analytics and search rankings are abysmal. When you're going to Google Analytics or some other analytics tool, all the metrics looks terrible. You're not growing any traffic. In fact, it's really bad. Your bounce rate's really high. People aren't spending any time on the site. When you search braces or Invisalign or orthodontist near me, you're nowhere to be found. All these things are signs that you need to start over with your website and build a good foundation and then start working on SEO and conversion rate optimization, etc. If you're not converting people when people come to the site, it's a website issue. If you're not getting people to the site, it's a website issue. Your website is the hub of all that traffic and internet interest. So Your Google Analytics or analytics in general are going to give you a good indication of whether your website needs to be remade. Number 7, your website is not mobile friendly. If you didn't hear me before, people are doing more searches on mobile than they are on desktop. So mobile is actually the most important thing. So just look at your site on your phone. Look at your site on someone else's phone. Again, make sure your site looks good on an iPhone and an Android phone because they're going to be very different. You need to make sure people can find what they're looking for on your website. You make sure it looks really good. It should look as good or better on the phone than it does on your desktop computer. That's absolutely the standard now. So make sure your site looks great on a mobile device. Okay, number 8, your website uses Flash or some other outdated software. If you don't know what Flash is, it played a lot of videos and animated content back in the day. So if you have Flash on your site, it doesn't work at all right now. So you're going to see places where a video should be or an animation or a slider and it just doesn't work at all. These are some indications you might have Flash or some other outdated software. Websites are changing all the time. Google keeps pushing the envelope over and over again and forcing people to keep their technology up to date. So a lot of times if you're not changing your website and updating it frequently, it becomes obsolete really fast. And not only does it look bad, but it doesn't work anymore. And people are going to not take your practice seriously at all if this is the case. So make sure that the software that's running your website is up to date. Number 9, your website doesn't incorporate any calls to action. Why are people coming to your website? What is the whole purpose of your website? The purpose is to get people to the website, get to know you, build a relationship, but finally, the last step is let's schedule an appointment. Let's give you a phone call. Let's message you on chat. We need to take an action that equals them coming into the office and then becoming a new patient. So when you're on a website, that happens through calls to action. It's buttons in the right place, the right size, or the right color, with the right words. You need to be playing with this all the time and optimizing the site for conversion, and calls to action are a huge part of that. We want people to come to the site, take the action that we designed the site for, and then turn that person into a patient. So make sure you have calls to action, make sure you have the right calls to action, and make sure you keep improving the site so you optimize them as much as possible. Because we've already paid for that traffic to come to the site. We don't want to ruin it and people just leave without taking the action we want them to, because then we're just throwing money away. All right, number 10, you can't make changes to the website yourself. Back in the day, this was normal because you had to be a programmer and understand how to code to do any kind of changes on the website, which was great for website companies because they could charge you a ton of money to make all these changes because you're paying for a very highly skilled person to do something. But that's just not the case anymore. For an orthodontic practice, you should be using a website that has a really good CMS, content management system, like WordPress, which if it's built right, then you can go into it and make changes like little text changes, little photo changes, moving things around. You should be able to do that yourself. Why go through the hassle and time and money of paying someone else to make simple changes that you can make? But if you're super busy and you don't want to make any of those changes and you still want to pay the web developer to do it, if the site isn't made so that it's easy to make these changes, guess what? It takes more time to make the changes and it takes a more skilled person to make the changes. Therefore, they're going to charge you a lot more to make simple changes that could take maybe someone else 15 minutes versus the person who built it the hard way. It takes them 2 hours. Time is money. Make sure the website is easy to be changed. Okay, so you know you need a new website. What should you do about it? How can you fix this? First, start by hiring someone who knows what they're doing. Hire a professional. I'm not saying you hire the professional that's going to charge the most for the website. They don't necessarily go together. But you can look at their past work and see if they follow all these rules. Does it look good? Is it mobile responsive? Is the user experience really good? You're going to know. Their past work is just going to tell the story right there. So first, find someone who knows what they're doing and is going to charge you a fair price. And what's a fair price? Look around. You can just Google it and you can see kind of where they should be. But I can tell you right now that if you're building an orthodontic site, unless the site is like 50 pages, it really shouldn't exceed like $15,000 for a website. And most often, it might even be a third of that depending on what size your site is. And it really should be based off size. The more pages, the more work. So websites are really just building a nice looking page, putting text in there, putting an image in there, making everything work, and knowing what you're doing because you're experienced. If you know what you're doing, you just knock them out, and the more pages there is, the more work there is. All right, the second most important thing, make sure it's driven with a good content management system like WordPress. I really think WordPress is the best. For software-driven websites, it accounts for more than 59% of all software-driven websites in the world. There's a reason for that. And WordPress updates all the time. You're not going to worry about software getting outdated. Plus, you can go in there and actually make changes as long as it's made correctly. Really, I think WordPress is the best, but at the very least, whatever your site is, make sure it's possible for you to log into it and make changes. Make sure that it's a reputable piece of software that is not going to become outdated in a few years and you're going to have to redo the site all over again. I really recommend WordPress. I think that's the best way to go for an orthodontic practice website. Okay, tip number 3 is content. Make sure you have great content on the site. So what do I mean by that? Let's start with photography. Do you have great photography of the doctor, of the team, of the practice? Are you telling your story? Now's the time, if you haven't had a photo shoot in a while, to have one. You want to have top-notch photography on the site, which means whoever you work with, make sure they have access to great stock photography, because you're not generally going to put all custom photography on the site. You need access to great stock photography. All the images on the site need to look super professional and tell your story. Of course, next is the text. We call it copy in the marketing world. Is all the copy on the site original? Is it optimized for SEO? Is it telling your story? Does it differentiate you from everyone else in the orthodontic space? Most importantly, is it custom so it's not copied from 100 other sites? It's super important for SEO. It doesn't make you look professional. And of course, it's not going to tell your story, which is really what we need to do on the site. So make sure the content on the site is really good. And when you're ready, I really highly recommend you put video on the site. People want to get content through video. A lot of people don't want to read anymore. They just want to watch. So you need to make sure you have video on your site eventually and you're telling your story, you're building rapport with everyone. So when you're ready, I highly recommend you have video on your website. Number 4, and most important, take action. If you can't do a photo shoot now, just use your iPhone. If you're waiting for the practice to be remodeled, don't worry about it. Do the photo shoot later and then change the images. Stop with the excuses. You need to have an awesome professional website, because if you don't, you're sabotaging all of your other efforts to grow the practice. Take action right now.